Hey everybody, welcome to our screencast here about the Greco-Persian Wars, more specifically about the Battle of Marathon. We're going to take a inquiry-based look at this in terms of understanding the who, what, where, when, why, and how surrounding the Battle of Marathon. So the when is this takes place in 490 BCE, and we're talking about before Common Era. So this is a long time ago, and we're going to talk about some of the specifics here as we move forward. So the first thing we're going to take a look at is why. Why was this battle fought? What were the reasons behind the fighting between some of the Greeks and the Persian Empire? Well, we've got this character named King Darius, the Persian king, and ultimately this guy wants revenge for the Ionian revolt. Ionia was a wealthy Greek settlement over on the Asian mainland in what is now known as Turkey. The Persians had overtaken the Ionians, and now they were in open revolt against the Persian Empire. They no longer wanted to be taxed by them, and they sought help from their friends in Athens who came, defeated the Persians, and then ultimately left. King Darius was not okay with this. He was sitting around thinking about this open revolt against what really was the largest empire of the day, centered in what is now known as Iran. And he says to himself, he says, you know what? We need to do something else against these Greeks. So what does he do? He says, tell the Greeks that I want some land and water as a show of respect. I am the Persian king. And this is exactly what happened. So he sent messengers over to Athens, and let's think about, well, how did the Greeks respond when he asked for that? Well, this is essentially what the Greeks did to King Darius's messengers. They threw them into a pit and said, yeah, tell your king that if he wants it, he can come and get it, okay? So that gets us to our next question. So who fought? We're talking about 15,000 Persian foot soldiers and cavalry, which is soldiers on horseback. So this is a pretty large, formidable army that he's assembling to go and seek his revenge against the Greeks. So in response, Athens, they send 11,000 of their troops to what is called the plain of Marathon to meet and ultimately go against the Persian king and his troops that are assembled there. Now, where was this exactly? We call this the Plain of Marathon, and Marathon was one of these city-states that was only 26 miles northwest of Athens. So Athens, again, went to the defense of Marathon, and really this is, when we say the Plain of Marathon, this is the perfect fighting spot for them. So to call it a city-state may not be as accurate as we think, but really we're talking about this area, okay? And 26 miles really is an interesting number because following the news of the Battle of Marathon, a man ran all the way back to Athens without stopping to give them the news of the outcome of this. And that's why we have a common race known today as marathons. So what we want to understand are what were the things that ultimately influenced the outcome of this particular battle. And there's a few things that we need to think about. The first was the Greeks had better armor and better equipment. Okay, so we're talking about better weapons. So when you've got these technological advantages, ultimately you have a better chance of beating your enemy even if you're outnumbered by them. Technology always plays an advantage in military strategies and military outcomes. So we do need to talk about this Greek general named MiltonADIZ. All right, this guy really insisted, and he was like, we need to fight the Persians at Marathon. And there were a few different reasons for this. One, that was close to the water. Another was it gave them a good amount of distance between themselves and Athens. And they thought that this was going to be really the place to meet them and ultimately have advantages in terms of geography. So because he was such a great general, his strategies on how to fight the larger Persian army and cavalry ultimately came to play here in the Battle of Marathon. So what does he do? He begins to march forward and engage the Persian army and cavalry, and then the Persian army then begins to engage them as well, which means that they start marching towards each other and get ready to fight. But seeing that the Athenian army was outnumbered, he only sent a few of his army. The other parts of his army he ultimately sent to the two sides, and this is what we call flanking. So what he does is he sends the rest of his Athenian army to the left and the right side of the Persians, ultimately fighting them on three sides. Now the Persians didn't really know what to do with this, and they ultimately began to retreat. So what do? They head back to their boats and then ultimately head back to Persia. So we see this happening here, and the Persians have to retreat, ultimately losing the Battle of Marathon. So now, let's take a last look at some of those things that we're talking about here. So who was fighting? We've got the Persians versus the Athenians. And notice I didn't say the Greeks because remember, they saw themselves as separate city-states, and the Athenians were the ones that engaged the Persians at this particular battle. So what was the significance of this? This battle ultimately leads to future battles. Okay, where did it take place? We talked about the plain of Marathon. When? 490 BCE. Why was this battle fought? Again, King Darius wanted revenge for the Ionian revolt. So how was it that the Athenians were able to come away with a win even though they had less soldiers? Again, better equipment and better strategy ultimately play into this particular battle. So what? What does this matter? What this does is this highlights the beginning of future battles as King Xerxes, the son of King Darius, sought to avenge his father's loss at Marathon. So this is really the tip of the iceberg with the Persian Wars in understanding how things developed and ultimately how it led to other things. So if you need to go back, take a look at this stuff, do it, rewind, use this information to your advantage, use it as a resource, and I'll see you in our next video about the Greco-Persian Wars.